Alrighty, hello every folks, and good morning. Welcome to a quick little rule set thing that I wanted to throw out there for you, because Tactics Ogre Classic is one of those games that's really fun to revisit, but unfortunately is very, very easy to break. It's one of these games where at any time you could, for example, go into training mode, take all the equipment off two of your units, put them into training mode, have them slap each other back and forth while you go and have lunch, basically come back and steamroll the entire game. It's a game that's so comically easy to break that oftentimes we end up missing a lot of the cooler aspects of this original version, which is a shame because it did do a lot of unique, cool stuff that really didn't have a whole lot of place in the later versions. Things like specifically the mechanic that this rule set was built around, like the pickup mechanic, where you can, let's say, pick up items off the ground and slot them into your characters. Because in this version, the inventory system was simply 4 slots of whatever the hell happens to be on that person at any given time. All equipment, all consumables, all everything are just in those 4 slots. Or, for example, things like dragons always being able to use their dragon's breath, whereas, let's say, something like griffins end up having to hurt themselves in order to even attack things, or golems basically having nothing to do whatsoever and just being a rock man. It's one of these games that just kind of did its own thing. It was just sort of having fun with a concept more so than trying to be kind of directly balanced in a lot of ways. And so to that end, there were a lot of unique mechanics to this version that, again, didn't make it to other versions. And if you're going for, let's say, kind of re-exploring the story of Tactics Ogre and whatever else, you'll oftentimes find that playing through Classic is a fun way to, again, just kind of shake things up, because you'll oftentimes find that routes are actually different. Stories play out a little bit differently. A lot of events happen differently. And so this can be kind of interesting. Like, for example, let's say you go down Law. Rather than infiltrating the city from the streets below, they instead end up kind of sneaking through it and then attacking from above, which leads to a very, very different feeling where you're fighting a bunch of hawkmen and stuff. You'll oftentimes notice that there's a much more varied amount of units as the game goes on in this version in terms of the stuff that you can actually use. Like, for example, your recruit skill that only Denam can use is actually going to affect everything that is recruitable. So, like, let's say you go into the first fights versus the undead, and there's just skeletons there, and you can just talk to those skeletons and they'll join you. You can recruit dragons and golems and whatever else very, very early. Like, if you ever had those moments where it's like, I don't understand why the enemy teams get access to so many different units early on in the later games, it's simply put because you could always do that in this one. So that part of it is fun. Now, granted, mechanically it's not exactly very complex compared to the other versions. There really isn't a whole lot in the way of kind of counterplay and stuff like that, and oftentimes it just kind of comes down to positioning and training up your people well, but that's the thing. Whenever we play through this thing, oftentimes we'll find that we're going to the same old try-hard BS that we've done a million times before, giving every unit ranged weapons, stacking them up with a bunch of healing items and whatever else. And so it loses a lot of that initial luster. It's kind of like how I've heard a lot of folks describe that the best moments of something like Minecraft happen in the first 10 minutes, where you have those moments where everything feels serious until you figure out how to actually play the game, and now it's not fun anymore. And Tactics Ogre Classic is no different. As soon as you figure out how to optimize your teams, it is a very, very easy game. But as soon as you have some reason not to use those optimized teams, things are very different. So this rule set that I'm talking about here today was specifically designed around one particular mechanic that never really has a reason to be used at any time, really, over the course of a regular playthrough. And that's the pickup mechanic. Namely, that whenever you happen to walk over a bag, well, first of all, if an enemy picks up a bag, it will lie to you, but if you pick up a bag and you're able to use that item, it will say, hey, this is a hat, your guy has nothing in their hat slot, would you like to have a hat? And they'll just go and pop it on their head, because, the units themselves are not very complex in this version. It's just a little bit of extra stats, a little bit of extra resistance, and it's just kind of cool that that's a thing that you can do. But for example, let's say you kill off a unit and you happen to pick up a consumable this way, it means that, you now have a new consumable for you. And oftentimes units will carry unique equipment that you would normally kill them for, but in this case it might make more sense to recruit them instead. So what is this rule set? Simply put, you're never allowed to access your party menu, and you're never allowed to use training except for one time. And that one time is not for the purpose of experience, that one time is for the purpose of establishing a pecking order. See, at the very start, And this is literally just for flavor because I thought it was a ton of fun. But at the very start, what we're going to do is actually just have all of our basic soldiers fight each other, 1v1. Just kind of have a tournament between themselves in order to establish who is clearly the best of the bunch. And frankly, that soldier unfortunately didn't end up lasting this playthrough. She died in Balmusa, but still, a lot of our others survived, and they will carry on their legacy, dang it. And still, it just kind of adds a bit more flavor to the playthrough, I feel. Anyway, so what we're looking at here, in terms of why this is fun, is because it's kind of like a built-in soft randomizer of sorts, where you'll oftentimes find yourself using builds and units that you otherwise would never use. Like normally, you'd take your Hawkmen, just give them longbows, park them up on rooftops. This whole axe and shield thing is just a straight up liability of a bad idea, but it's what we've got right now. Because the only things that we can do is to keep on marching forward through the story. So, like, if you're given a location, like, as soon as you go back to the map, you don't go wherever you want, you just march straight on to the next location of the story. If you get a random fight, you get a random fight. If you don't, you don't. But it leads to something a little bit different every time, and this is so much fun in terms of the kind of different units that it can land you with. So this is the second time that I'm going through this thing currently, and yeah, the parties just wind up being entirely different. The kind of challenges that you run into might feel entirely different every time, depending on kind of who survived up to that point, and what kind of stuff you managed to get a hold of. And additionally, it's just fun that this pickup mechanic, which normally has absolutely no use, now suddenly is very, very potentially important. Meaning that it might be one of the few cases where you might be able to get a hold of certain items or what have you. Like if I were to, let's say, take what I was originally trying to do is actually to take Denam and give him this staff in Balmusa, because in Balmusa Law there's a guy that carries a staff. A lot of the unique equipment that you get in Palace of the Dead and later versions of Tactics Ogre you actually get way earlier in this one. So for example, when I was going through there, what I wanted to do was kill off that guy and get a hold of this staff early. Unfortunately, this AI berserker ended up going and killing off everybody else, meaning that unfortunately he had to be recruited instead of giving that staff to Denam. At which point, that berserker actually ended up coming back and killing that wizard himself. That guy, who has not survived up to this point, did like to cause problems. Now you might be saying, wait a minute, I don't remember there being any kind of friendly berserkers there, what the hell? See, the thing is, when you recruit a unit in this game, they actually will essentially operate off of AI until the fight ends. Meaning that even when you do get a recruit, they're actually really unpredictable. And sometimes they'll end up screwing you over, adding yet another kind of wrench in the works here. Meaning that the sort of roguelike dream mode of Tactics Ogre SNES, or Tactics Ogre Classic in this case, is something that is more or less achievable with the game itself. No, Orange! They were one of the starter soldiers! Why do they have to die here? Because these guys have a massive jump in difficulty, that's why. But yeah, so I think that this is a really fun kind of way to play through, and additionally, it kind of forces you into using lore-accurate Denam, because in every cutscene in this game, he will whip out a short sword, and it's the weapon that he starts with. It's a weapon that you basically can't remove over the course of this game here. So your options for re-equipping this guy are just to give him an offhand use item, or to give him a consumable, or, let's say if you end up going down Lord route later, you can technically dual wield it if you give him another sword. Technically you can put anything in his other offhand and he'll dual wield it, so I guess there's technically that too. But it's just kind of cool, you get to see mechanics that you wouldn't normally ever use, so that's fun. I think that's pretty darn neat. And yeah, it leads to a lot of kind of fun emergent storytelling there. Leads to a lot of potentially taking risks when you probably shouldn't be. Like when I was going and taking a risk to go recruit this knight over here because I want to get some replacement units. Seeing as our party has barely been able to actually keep up with the deploy limit. Actually, another thing that's kind of unique to this version that's kind of neat is that actually this is technically available as a cheat for the other versions too. But you can always deploy your maximum party size, so you can always deploy 10, meaning that you're usually at a numbers advantage early on, and other times, that'll end up kind of playing a part. That is one of those things that this one was very good at. Like, it's not concerned about being balanced, it's concerned about setting the mood. And so oftentimes it would do strange things with its party loadouts, or do strange things with the equipment it gave people or whatever else. Because again, its main concern was telling a story and creating a world, not anything else. And so yeah, it led to a lot of fun occasions there. Plus, also, you have those moments like right here, where you'll end up recruiting a skeleton who's just there soaking hits for everybody for ages. You have situations like Alasar over here being the nightmare that everybody remembers her being. Yeah, if you've never played Classic, if you're wondering why Alasar is over there basically capable of two-shotting a dragon, this is her normal state of being. She is a nightmare in this version. That whole line about her potentially killing a crazy amount of units entirely by herself, yeah, that's not undeserved. Like, she is nightmarishly strong for when you encounter her here. So yeah. Anyways, so I just thought this was a fun little rule set to share with you all. You know, maybe it'll be useful for your next playthrough. And yeah, so I'll see you guys in the next one then. Take care, and thank you for stopping by. Later.